Well, thanks for staying with us. Race towards 2023, and it's really all about the leadership question here. During the week, APC chieftain Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Governor David Umahi, and Senator Orji Uzor Kalu, as well as Chief Dele Momodu, all declared their intentions to vie for president of the nation, as president for the 2023 general elections. So as the year approaches, the 2023 approaches, and intents are being revealed, we'll take a look at the capability of those who have shown intention, how fit they are for the presidential seat, and wait a minute, what are the questions really that we should be asking about leadership? Who are the people, what are the questions that people should be asking about who should be there to occupy that seat or any other seat at that? The people who want to get into this space, what's their entry-level qualification? And wait a minute.
Has capability ever mattered to Nigerians?
So that's the question we should be asking. Shouldn't it matter? Those are the questions that we're raising this morning. Professor Ademola Abbas joins us here in the studio. He's a professor of international law and global security analyst. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Also joining us is Ken Egbaz, who is CEO, True Contact, and a contender in the 2023 elections. Thanks for joining us this morning. As well as Curtis Adigba, who is a legal practitioner and political consultant. He will be joining us from the US. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. Professor Abbas, let's begin with you. So the race has begun. Well, actually, there are those who say that the race began in 2019 already, because as soon as one election is over, politicians are already contending for the next one. And we had a very interesting conversation with a chieftain of the APC, Fuadoki, who says there are pretenders who become contenders, who become contestants, and then become candidates.
Huh. Wow, it's a long road, isn't it?
So first of all, concerning the whole jostling, what's your take?
Well, thank you very much once again for having me. Look, it is the right of all Nigerians to jostle, to contest any position in the land. It's a constitutional guarantee. So there's nothing really wrong in that. Wherever you are from, whoever you are, you can contest anything in the country, in as long as you have the constitutional right to do so. But the question then you raised is the question of, I heard Madam joking about whether competence ever mattered to Nigeria. You throw the whole lot in the park, then you begin to take the wheel from the shaft, sieve at the end of the day. And that is where the question of competency comes in, and a host of other things. And again, I like the fact that Madam joked about the fact that, look, the contest actually started, as you said, in 2019. And that raises a very important question. How many years do our leaders actually spend in power? Is it part of the democracy to be for 4 years? Do they really spend 4 years? It's something I think we should actually address at a point in time, but don't let me get ahead. It's just the fact that Madam says something, which is very important. We can joke about it. That the moment you swear in a regime, they begin to jostle straight away for the next term. When do they actually do the job? Let's be honest. This current administration has about roughly 16 months to spend. You and I know very well that in the next 16 months, governance is gone. It's all politics. Take 16 months from 4 years, what do you have left? And when they come in, they spend about 6 months, 8 months trying to stabilize and appoint a cabinet. So take 20 months out of what do you have left?
4 years.
So that raises a question of the term limitation. I think we can address that. It's a very, very important issue that we take for granted. People confuse democracy with 2 terms in office. No, they're 2 different things. Democracy is how a government comes to power. The role people play. Those who are going to be governed, do they participate in that process?
But we agreed as a nation that democracy is going to be our employment process for governance. So shouldn't that be part of the process?
It is part of the process. I am not saying it's not part of the process. Now, democracy, I mean, as is generically defined, is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now, the question is, that talks about how the government is put in power. What I'm raising here is that how long does the government stay in power. If a people decide to put a government in power for the next 20 years in a democratic process, that is, you vote for them, there's nothing wrong in that if that is what suits you as a people.
That's what the people want.
Yeah, let me go back to the U.S. We talk about two terms here in the U.S. We keep forgetting that U.S. only started constitutional two terms in 1951. That is, after the 22nd Amendment was adopted. When George Washington came in 1787, there was no constitutional limitation on how many terms a U.S. president could be there. In fact, in the Constitutional Conference of a few years before, chaired by Washington himself, they had proposed one term of 7 years for American president. It was voted out. So when George Washington came to play in 1987 as the first president of America, there was no limitation on his power. But by the time he was going to die, shortly before he died, it was 67 when he died, he was already tired. And he said, look, I don't want to go for a third term. Let me limit it to 2 terms. So he actually started 2 terms by convention, by practice. And every president that followed him did the same thing until 1940, I think 44, Franklin Roosevelt. Then went for 3rd term and 4th term and became the first and the only president in the U.S. to go beyond 2 terms. That was when the Americans then went back to the Constitution and said, hang on, we don't want this anymore. And then in 1947, they proposed this 22nd Amendment, which then went into law in 1951. And that was when it became only 2 terms in America. Why am I saying this? We cannot trust Nigerian leaders as you could trust American leaders to say, look, I'm too tired, I don't want to go for more than 2 terms.
Yeah.
You cannot say, constitutionally, we don't have it, but morally, let's do this. So what I'm saying is that we need to have a conversation about how long should our leaders stay in power.
I've often wondered, where is the place of morals in law? I keep asking that question. But Mr. Igbas, let's have this conversation with you as well. One of the questions that I've been asking over time, asking several people, is when will we begin to allow new blood, so to speak, into the space? Those who, if I am going to draw from some of the things Professor Abbas has said, who can still adopt some morality, bring in some morality into democracy, into democratic practice, into politics, and into governance. You are a private sector person, and we have had a few of you guys, in governance, but it would seem like once some people come in, the next thing you know, there is some veering along the line. So
they're
young
duly
blood,
baptized once they get in.
getting young blood into the system is one thing. Keeping them fresh in the system, to breathe in the new air into the system. Now, that's another conversation altogether. What are your propositions?
Well, for me, I think I would first like to start from where Professor Abbas talked about how long do people really stay in power. Is a problem in the sense that if you look at other democracies around the world, when we vote people into office, they come to you first and foremost with a plan, which is contained in the manifesto with which they used to reach out to the electorate. Now, when you have this in place, the fact that at some point during your 4-year term, you're going to be engaging in perhaps a term renewal or the processes of getting a successor, I don't think it should distort the internalism of politics. In other places, for example, where they have all of this, they run with ministries, they run with organs of government. A government that has been given the power by the electorate to govern them must run on a program. When that vision is focused on the program, what you deliver will continue to be constant. It will not be affected by the fact that we're going into another season of electioneering. So I just wanted to make that point. And the second thing, in everything, there's always a succession. If you see any leader who understands leadership, the first thing the leader does is that the very first day you resume your office, whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector, the idea is this, that you begin to look at, okay, one day, because this thing is termed, so as it has a beginning, it has an end. The problem we have on this side of the world is that people get into office begin to love the local, all the things that come with office, then they don't even get to that place where they begin to think that after this, what next? So that's why you see most Nigerian politicians, we've had to recycle and recycle and recycle. And that recycling has also created a national conundrum where ideas are not coming from any other place in the society than these people. And if you understand how leadership was instituted, even from the beginning, it is generational. That means that in 20 years' time, in 50 years' time, the solution to the problems that the people of those times will be facing should be coming from that generation. So what we do wrongly that impacts negatively our ability to function effectively as a society is the fact that we do not look at the fact our leaders who are there now need to pay attention to the fact that we need to bring in new ideas. We need to bring in people who can drive innovation. We need to bring in people who can connect with the generations we are trying to deal with, for example.
But Ken,
now, when you have leadership
Ken,
of some,
just 1 second on that issue of fresh ideas, new vision, and all those things. Interrogating that is another issue altogether. On the one hand, you know that the people, most of the people, especially in the rural areas, the people who do the actual voting, which number has been reducing, by the way, they are not really savvy about interrogating the issues. They just want to live a good life today. They're not, they communicating the idea of a futuristic Nigeria to them is utopian, because even right now,
Hard sell.
I can't see Nigeria, so how do we now begin to communicate that to them? Poverty levels on the rise, unemployment, figures on the rise, and people are having problems staring them in the face on a daily basis. So any politician that comes to them is a payday. We'll come back to that one some other time. So
Exactly.
how do we begin to interrogate those issues, those ideas and ideals you're bringing on of thinking futuristically?
yeah, I think the answer to your question is in your question already. You see, the whole thing is this. We need to begin to, there's a whole lot of voter education that needs to happen. In Cross River here, we're doing quite a lot of that. Because when people are poor, their tendency, when they cannot feed themselves, when they cannot feed their children, the tendency that they would think things through the proper prisms is nearly non-existent. We have seen in this country, Ayo, and you can bear witness to it. On the day of elections, people go and line up. Somebody brings loaves of bread and put 1,000 naira in it, and people take that and vote for such a person. And after that, they never see that person again till another cycle of 4 years. So the issue there is that we need to, that is why I'm happy you have a topic like this morning. While we are talking about leadership, leadership is one side of the problem, or one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is followership. The followers themselves have to begin to understand and interrogate themselves. What kind of future do we want? Now, there's this quote I saw not very long ago, but I can't really remember how it was written. He said, the fools are so powerful and that they continue to grow themselves. And if the people are not careful, one day they will elect one of them as a leader. Now, our people have to understand that, you cannot rise. Everybody is expecting good roads. Everybody is expecting healthcare to work. Everybody is expecting education to be perfect. Everybody is expecting the value of the naira to almost match the dollar. Or even if it doesn't match it should be at a place where it doesn't negatively impact our ability to buy or spend money. Now, all these decisions on how we live and the quality of life our children will have has to do with the decisions that we make today. So while we interrogate or while we question the quality of leadership that we have all over this country today, we must also be educating our voters, the electorate. What kind of questions should you ask when a woman or a man or any candidate or an aspirant comes before you and asks you to give him...
Thank you, Ken. Let's bring it back to the studio. Professor, my partner is talking about bringing fresh blood, bringing young blood in. But from what we know, the system already has cut them out. For instance, we hear that to get forms for presidential, you are going to pay something like 50 million to get the form, and you may not even get the nomination from your party. So where is a young person supposed to get those kinds of funds to actually be able to throw their hat into the ring?
I'm so glad for that question, because that actually strikes at the core of the whole problem we face today. I think in Nigeria we have developed this attitude of demonizing and lionizing without reflecting. People wake up and say, oh, not too young to run, oh, too old to run. And I say, look, slow down. In Nigeria, we are confusing age with senility. They're two different things. You can be an 80-year-old and more vibrant, more sensible, more rational than a 50-year-old. Everybody who governs US today, Nancy Pelosi, leader of the Congress, she's 80. Biden is 80. Trump, for all his ills, 70-something.
Biden is not 80 yet.
Well, Biden is 80. Well, he's going to be 80 this year. That's what I mean. He's going to be 80 this year. So I'm approximating. Even all those who are contesting then, Hillary Clinton, and so many of them, they were either 70 or kissing 70 or on the first half of 70. Nobody's talking about their age. But in Nigeria, sometime by the time you are 60...
Well, Obama was 40s, yeah, Clinton was 40s.
Precisely. No, I'm starting from the fact that when we say not too young to run, the converse is not too old to run automatically. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That we should not diagnose and demonize, as an example. Look, we have brilliant young leaders in the world. You know, Simone Chi in San Remo, who is the youngest in the world today, is 27 years old. You know, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, she's just, you know, how many years old? Sana in Finland, 30-something. Even Goita here in Mali. You know, so many of them. We have so many brilliant young leaders. So, of course, there is enough. We need fresh blood. But which fresh blood? And what is the mechanism? That we cannot run away from. And that comes to the question that what is the situation currently in Nigeria is? Are we just talking the talk without walking the walk? On the one hand, you are saying you want to encourage your youth to get involved in your governance, but you are slamming 250 million naira bill to somebody who wants to pick a form of a governorship in a new electoral law. And that's what are you talking about? You know, so we cannot really, and I listen to the gentleman talking about, you know, problem of followership. Yes, the followership, there's a problem of followership, but where does it come from, for goodness sake? Nigerians have already got used to their leaders not doing anything for them. Look, there's so we celebrate mediocrity in this country.
But is that a good thing? And how do we begin to address that one that you just said now? Nigerians have gotten used to their leaders not doing things.
But that's where I'm going to. Look, Ayo, look at it from this angle. I'm a voter. And you know what? Those who actually vote in Nigeria, let's be honest, the majority of I can speak about Lagos State. The majority of voters in Lagos State are not the savvy, academic, intelligent youths who are going to spend time analyzing the problems of this state. No. On that day, they'll be watching Chelsea and Arsenal and whoever is playing. It is the market women in Oshodi and this and that. And they will follow their leaders, wherever their leader direct them to. They will follow them. In other words, there's a question for the youths themselves. How do we spend our time? I've talked to so many of my friends who are much younger than me that, look, I don't get it. You are happy to spend 90 days glued to your television, watching BBN, Big Brother Nigeria, and I have no problem with that. You mobilize all your friends to go and vote, but you can't spend 2 hours to stand on a queue to vote, to put in somebody who's going to affect your life, your parents' life, your everybody's life for the next 4 years.
And your
but
future.
Prof, is it not looking like that is going to change now with all that is going on social media with NSAS and all that? Are they not showing more interest in what happens in governance in Nigeria?
I think NSAS was a pivotal moment for the youth awakening in this country. And I love that, if not for anything, at least they showed during NSAS, the youth showed that they were not lazy. Maybe they've been misapplying their energy and their priority. They showed that they could actually take control of this country. And they need to, but they need to ramp up. But for them to ramp up, we have to make it also easy for them, accessible to them. Youth cannot ramp up when you are slamming 250 million, 500 million bill on forms. Again, another question is, what roles do we play to change things in Nigeria? You know, I was in the government before, you know, when you leave government, people call you, I'm not going to run again. I said, look, that is a mistake we make in Nigeria. Not everybody will become a governor. Not everybody will become a president. Your role might be at your local level to mobilize towards a good leadership. And that is very, very important. So youth have a role to play in Nigeria. There's no question about it. And that is where the role of these representatives and the senators actually come to play. You need to fix many of these things by law. You cannot be sitting down saying, oh, youth must take control. Your youth must have access. And then you pass bills in your chambers that immediately outlaw youth from that same, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, it would not be in their interest. So,
At
I mean,
all.
are you surprised that they're not eager to do things like that? Now, Ken, what are your thoughts about the youth actually coming into the fray?
I think it's important to bring the youth into the fray. I like the way Professor Abbas puts it. I think these are really topical issues, and hopefully, maybe in the next National Assembly, these are the kind of things that need to come to the fore, because you cannot say that you want fresh blood, you want new ideas, then you say they should pay that amount of money for forms. The idea is this: what that begins to do to people is that when they get to office, they are first trying to recoup, and they don't have answers to any answers to the people who put them in power. But having said that, I think that if we begin to interrogate this a bit further, we're looking at what should qualify whether a young person or an older person, because I like the way Professor Abbas puts it, that you can have an older person who is more vibrant than a young person. But whether it's, when we're talking about fresh blood, it actually doesn't limit, it's not limited to age. It's not limited to gender. It's limited to ability to have access to come in. You know, everybody should be able to come in. We should first create that. Then, having said that, I think the other thing is that our youth are largely misinformed and greatly influenced by cultures, external cultures that do not add value to their everyday life. I've also been moving around and having conversations with young people. The first thing that you'll notice is that when it comes to taking very critical decisions, they're always missing from the room. Now, exclusion can be systemic or it can be voluntary. Now, in this case, even though there are systemic issues that are keeping young people out of the room, they themselves are not showing the level of interest, passion, and commitment, and saying that we want to be part of this conversation.
But that
will
may
shape
be, Ken, just 1 second, that may be as a result of what Professor Abbas said earlier, that look, already you show us that we are not important. We employ you to do jobs for us, you don't do the job, so we are getting used already to people not doing anything. So why get interested in something that we know is not going to benefit the larger majority?
Ayo, you were in this country 2 years ago when the End SARS movement brought the entire nation to a standstill. That is the power of resolve. Even if there are issues that are keeping our young people from being able to actively participate, they have the right to put their numbers together and ask to be heard. Today, if all the young people in this country come out in their millions and say to us that, and say to the government that we want to participate in this politics of 2023, but these things you have put are like roadblocks. In fact, they're not roadblocks, they are sealed doors that we cannot pass through. And we would like this to change. I can bet you that the conversation will begin all the way to every strata of leadership in this country, and they will be heard. All over the world, freedom is never really given. It has to be taken. And the young people have to understand that they have the powers to do this. And it starts by getting involved, getting a permanent voter's card, telling yourself that these things involve my children, my children's children. So I'm not going to sit down and leave it to people who have no idea what they're doing. They also have to be, young people also have to be involved in that conversation around who are the kind of people that we vote into the office or offices. What have they done in their lifetime? What can they show that they have done? Whether you're in private sector or public sector, you must be able to show proof or evidence that I have this capacity, I have these certain competencies, I have used them to the benefit of humanity or my community to this extent. Young people should be driving this. Because if you see the history where we are in Nigeria today, effectively, Ayo, and you can check this out, we have almost 4 generations of, if not 5, that have been suppressed. Now, this is what is leading to the extent of the degree or high degree of criminal activities having all over the country, because we have people who have gone to school, even with a master's degree, cannot find a place where they are taken into the system and can make themselves viable or strong contributors to the economic growth of their community, the society, and the country at large. Those are some of the issues as well. So
Okay.
for me, I believe that some things we need to look at as we go forward.
Okay. And now, Professor, you said something earlier about us, the electorate, not actually expecting anything from our leaders. This democratic, should I call it an experiment or whatever, we've been at it now for 22 years.
Roughly 20 to 23 years
Yeah,
now.
going on 23. Is it not time that we were becoming a bit more mature in this exercise? Don't you think we should have got to a point now where we, as those who elected those leaders, should actually be able to interrogate what they're doing for us as opposed to what they said they were going to do when they were campaigning?
Thank you so much for that question. It goes straight in two directions. The first one is when I was talking earlier on about, whether we should interrogate certain aspects of our democracy. The second one is also from what the gentleman just said, which also we talk about, is the proof of who comes to office. How do you hold them to what they want to say? Now, let's face it. I can come out and say I want to be president of Nigeria. You have not heard from me for 4 years. You don't know who I am. I don't want to mention name. There's a particular candidate in Lagos that comes out every 4 years. Once they are defeated, they don't say anything for 4 years. Now, the problem with that is that people come forward only to contest. They have money, they have everything. Now, but we cannot test their mental strength. We can't test their psychological balancing. We can't test anything. We don't even know whether they have, we can't decipher their stance on public issues. Issues that they are going to be dealing with should they be elected into office. I mean, we have people who are coming out now to be president, to be anything in the country, who, when pivotal movement happened in this country, massive killings were going on. They chose not to say anything because they didn't want those comments to probably prejudice their position when they come out. Now, they don't say anything, so you don't really know what stand they take on very vital public issues. Now, when that kind of person comes out saying, I want to be governor, I want to be president, they've got money, and nobody's interrogating, hang on, I don't know your stance on abortion.
Where have you
I
been?
don't tell you about in the last 4 years. Oh, I saw you 4 years ago when you came out. After you lost, what happened? Because something tells me, Ayo, madam, if you genuinely want to serve your people and you lose an election in year 0 or year 1, or you are booted out of office in year 1, it doesn't shut you up. You keep on speaking up for those people. You identify, you talk about those issues. But if you are booted out of office or you lost an election, then you went into your cocoon for 4 years, you didn't say anything. The next time I see you is when you want to contest 4 years after. I'll be asking, in whose interest? For me, that is the first credential. So it doesn't matter whether you are young or old. And let me even flip the coin. There's one Nigerian I like what he does with that. I'm not saying he'll be the best candidate or anything. I don't even give a damn about that. It's Mr. Atiku. Whether you like it or not, I've been watching Mr. Atiku in this country, former Vice President Alhaji Atiku. He speaks his mind on issues, good or bad, whether you agree with him or not. He doesn't lose an election and goes back into his cocoon. He talks about almost everything. I only mention him because I pay close attention to people.
Example.
That's an example.
Well, one other thing that on that, my apologies for butting in, Prof. One other thing that a number of people have also identified concerning such a thing is what happened when the current, ruling party was in the opposition. Very vocal, very active, and all of that. And people are wondering, why is the main opposition party today not doing the same thing? But let me ask you this question about entry level. And Ken also may want to speak to that later. I remember quite a number of times the vice president has said over and over again, young people getting at whatever level. Even if you're getting as an SA, special advisor, special assistant, or even just the ordinary assistant to any politician, get in, learn the ropes, learn how the game is played, learn how the system works, and use it to raise your own stakes and all of that. But I don't know. First of all, what you do, that's what you think. What do you think about that? And that's not just talking about at the federal level or the state level. Many people are not even thinking about the local government level.
Ayo, thank you so much for that. You know, I've appeared on your program so many times, and I like to use personal examples because they resonate with me, because I've experienced these things before. When we were coming in 2015, that's government of Mr. Akinwumi Ambode, I was appointed as special advisor. Of course, in Lagos, special advisors and commissioners, you are at a core level, at par. You all report to the. But the concern of some of my friends and some of people is that, oh, why didn't he make you a commissioner? You are so close to him, you should be a commissioner. And I said, hang on. I don't care about whether you're a PA or you are S or anything. I care about what precisely you want to do in that office. And I'll throw this again to you. Just shortly before we were constituted as a cabinet in Lagos State, the governor called me that I wanted to be a commissioner in this particular, in a different ministry than it was already penned me down for. And I said to him, no. He said, why? I said, because I don't know jack about that ministry. It is the first time I'll be talking about this publicly. He said, I said, no, I don't. I cannot do something I'm not prepared for. And that was it. And I'm so happy that the person who actually occupied that ministry turned out to be one of the finest gentlemen, colleagues I had in that cabinet. And I'll tell you straight away, fantastic in terms of ideas and everything. And one day I was riding in the governor's car with him, and something that gentleman actually had to deal with. It was electricity in Lagos State, and I'm talking about Wale Oluwo. And the governor said, oh, there was no light in the area. I said, call your office. I called Wale Oluwo. Oh, we didn't have light in this area. So he dealt with it. And I turned to the governor and said, I'm happy that I did not take this position that day when you offered me. He said, why? I said, because I would never have been able to match what Wale did in Lagos State. That is it. You must be able to reflect on yourself, look at your competence, what you can do. That is what we are not good at doing in Nigeria. Because we've seen politics as, well, a president once said it's a do or die affair. So what do you expect? So people want to go there, and I keep telling people, if you really want to serve a people, and they say, thank you, don't serve me. Look, service is a burden, make no mistake. You should say thank you very much and go quietly. And then do whatever you can do to still keep on supporting them. But whenever you want to serve only yourself, and they say don't serve me, you tell them you are joking. No, sir, I must serve you, whether you like it or not. So that is the problem.
That's not service.
Precisely. And that is the bulk work of politicking in Nigeria, pure and simple.
Okay.
Ken.
I want to ask Ken that same question about entry level. My apologies, Alero. So Ken, getting in for the young people, level of involvement, many people are interested in getting in at the most relevant, most prominent level they can. I saw a post, you may have seen it as well, and maybe Professor Abbas and Alera have seen it, of a councillor in a local government, I think I don't know where it's in Gombe State. Councillor had about 15 assistants. So talking about entry level, what should young people that we're talking about be looking at? You've talked about them getting their PVCs to vote, but is that all there is to it?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to get involved. And I like the way I share Professor Abbas' viewpoint when he talks about capacity and people owning up to what they can and they cannot do. It's very, 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 very important because people have to be able to take up responsibilities that they're prepared for. And in terms of the responsibilities that you're prepared for, we all have to be in that mindset where we are ready to start from wherever it needs to start from. Now, so you can balance that. There are some people who have, for me, I don't even believe, by the way, there's anything called career politician. Politics for me is about service. So if you come into politics, the first thing your mentality should be that I'm coming in to serve because I have XYZ capacity in ABC. When that is there, then next thing you ask, because you see, when you go to all the bars, all the restaurants, you see all the armchair critics all over this country. They know the best thing to do about the economy. They know the best thing to do about sport. They know the best thing to do about environment. But all that conversation ends where they sit. Sometimes they even resort to fisticuffs to settle argument. It shouldn't just end there. People should begin to ask themselves, if I really feel this passionate about the solutions I think that I have, where should I enter through? I mean, I'll give you an example. I have been in the private sector most of my life, creating value, driving social enterprise, driving sustainability. My footprints are everywhere. When I came out, I took part in the electoral process in 2015. When I didn't get that, I was given an appointment as a special advisor to the governor of Cross River State, Governor Leah Limoke at the time. And they gave me the office of strategic planning. And I remember everybody was laughing at me and said, that place where they carry you go so, now paper, no money, no day there. And I laughed because the first thing that brought me there wasn't about money. Even though I was a special advisor for a short time before we handed over to this present government, I was able to put that office into a position that my successor would have now understood. Even the government will understand that. That was actually the most important office in the entire ministries that we had at the time. Because when that ministry functions, the finance, every other ministry works. Because you are the one sitting with the governor to draw up the development plan for the state. Now, that gave me a new vista. I even learned new things that I didn't know at the time. So when it comes to entry level, people have to be able to say to themselves, I am willing to start from somewhere. Maybe then there's this thing about everybody wants the plum of the cake. But if there's a way you can also go into serving leaders, people who are leaders right now, so that you learn the ropes under them, you work with them, you understand. The thing about politics is actually a game, whether we accept it or not. So you have to learn the dictates, the tricks, and all of that. And by the time you add that to the capacity or competencies that you already have, you understand the intrigue that go into it, and be able to show who you are and what you're able to do, and also be able to show that to the people, your electorate, or people who you expect to support you. Okay. I think that it puts you in a... So okay. I wanted to make this example. I was speaking to a young person yesterday, and he said this to me. I said, he was complaining about this particular leader. This leader is a bad leader. This leader is this. I said, but you voted for him. And he said, yes, we voted now. We did not have any choice. Then I asked him this question, and this is how Nigerians need to see our leadership issues right now. If I gave you a brand new Mercedes-Benz, and you were traveling from here to Uyo or to Lagos, and they brought in a driver, and you heard that that driver had never driven a car before in his life, and that person was to drive you to your destination, will you enter the vehicle? He said, God forbid. I said, fine. So why don't we apply this also in the place of leadership?
Ken, what would you say to those who have said quite often as well that politics is the shortcut to being rich in Nigeria?
Yeah, you see, that is actually the base of the problem we have in our society today. Like Professor Bass was saying, everybody wants to, I will stab you by force. You see, it's also part of that interrogation. We need to begin to look at people. What to do. I don't see why somebody who cannot show you a business that he has run, anything that he has ever been in charge that has worked in his life, will come to you and tell you that I can do this. You should begin to put a question mark there. Because actually, the problem we have in our society, in our politics in general, is that people see getting to office as a way to get rich. It would be nice if we got to a stage in this country where we have, like in some other clients, where you see people who take a sabbatical off their businesses or some things that they are already doing and say, because there's a vacuum, there's this gap. I can go and fill this gap. And when I finish, I limit my term. I'm going to do this for 4 years or do it for 8 years, and I come back to my business. The reason why you see most of our politicians who become career politicians is because they have no fallback position. Even despite their access to money and huge amount of funds, look at them 3, 4, 5 years after they come out of office. First and foremost, they build gargantuan houses they cannot maintain.
That's it.
And of course, when power goes, everybody who hangs around you also go. You see most of them resorting to selling off these properties after all. So when we say politics is a way to get out of poverty, yes, that is a problem. That is why we need to begin to get government, we need to get leadership to also create other, make things work in terms of creating jobs for these people, creating opportunities outside of politics. The number of people who come out to run for office most times is really scary. Now, the scariest part of it is that most of these people have no business even running for office in the first place.
Okay. Okay, Professor, I saw a post about 2 days ago, ostensibly by Governor El Rufai of Kaduna State, telling us what happened to those who steal. I mean, politicians who steal, in China, in Japan, in other climes. And he said he wanted the death sentence to be the punishment for corrupt leaders in Nigeria. And that made me think about the issue of the servant leader. What are your thoughts, for instance, about the death penalty for corrupt leaders, and then the issue of the servant leader? And talking about the servant leader reminds me of the interview that we conducted many years ago with Professor Soludo, the first time he came out to be governor of Anambra State, where he told us that we would never catch him driving in a convoy and more or less pushing people into the gutter because he wanted to pass, because he intended to be a servant leader. Well, he's got his chance now. He's been voted in as the governor, so we are all watching.
Well, thank you very much. Well, let me address the piece you mentioned about death penalty for politicians who steal. I will extend that to people who are corrupt in general. Look, corruption is the worst thing that can happen to a people, to a country. Everybody pays at the end of the day for it. But is death penalty the solution? I don't think so. Let's use other crimes where we have death penalty to interrogate whether if we then extend it to that, it will reduce.
It will work.
It will work. Look at armed robbery. Evidence, research has shown over and over that killing thieves, publicly executing them or whatever, doesn't really, in other words, actually, on the other hand, it makes them more brutal psychologically because they know once they are gotten, there's no reprieve, they'll be executed. So their margin of appreciation of human life falls even lower when they do that. I'll use another example. I lived in Europe for a few years, and I remember that in Germany, they have what they call Autobahn. On a particular highway, there is no speed limit. You can drive yourself literally to death if you like. Now, in the UK, it's 70 miles per hour. At a point in time, research showed that there are more accidents in the UK with 70 miles per hour than in Germany, where it is. Because the truth
But Prof, also remember to add that not everybody can drive on the Autobahn.
That is true. I agree with that.
Not everybody is allowed.
It's allowed to drive, yes.
Yes.
Which means there's a system that sort of, But what I'm trying to drive at is the fact that if I'm going to drive an Autobahn, I know that, there's a level of trust imposed on me to self-regulate myself when I'm going to do that.
That's right.
And that is what everybody is going to do. So when you extend such things to death penalty, somebody has stolen, you want to execute them, okay? You don't teach somebody a lesson by killing them. What lesson are you teaching them? You take them, and that is why sometimes jail can be it can be a big deterrent, so that you can see the consequence. If you put there for life, as an example, yeah, we're going to be paying for it, we're taxpayers, but at least it will serve as a deterrent. Somebody will look at you and say, look, if you go that way, for instance, look at the Ethiopian example. I used to work for the African Union, and I remember one of the things, I think it was Menawi did when he became prime minister. There was a lot of stealing in government. You didn't kill them. Okay, all the money you stole, he identified them, invest them in Ethiopia, and then they did a deal. You go to jail for 5 years. So Ethiopia has some of the highest number of hotels that you can ever get per capita anywhere, this and that. What I'm saying is that, look, stealing from government, corruption is a very endemic problem in Nigeria. We must tackle it. In Africa as a whole. But we must tackle it. It is all over the world. I mean, I remember I used to give a lot of talk in those days in my previous life in Europe. And I sat down what you call GCSP, Geneva Center for Security Policy, where I was training mid-rank diplomats and this and that. And one European woman stood up and said, oh, we don't like doing business with Africa because Africa is corrupt, unlike Europe. And I said, really, which Europe are you talking about? I said, because I just flew in from UK, and my Prime Minister, Tony Blair, did a deal with Saudi Arabia, went to sell these jet fighters, and he was accused of paying £1 billion to the Saudi prince to facilitate the sale. When they asked him a couple of days before I flew to Geneva, when they asked Tony Blair that, look, why did you pay that money? His answer was, well, because of sensitivity, national security, I cannot go into details. I say, you see, if in Europe it's there, in UK it's there, you will never open the British tabloid and find the word corruption. They call it sleaze. They call it cash for question, cash for honor. Cash for,
so it's more beautiful.
Yeah, you euphemize everything. So don't let's kid ourselves. Corruption is everywhere. But the question is, how do we tackle it in Nigeria?
Okay, now in that space, and I'm going to use, both of you will respond to this as well. So let me begin with Ken. In that space, we know corruption is endemic, and a good number of people have been accused, especially the politically exposed, have been accused of being at the forefront of it. Is it one of the questions we should be asking people who are vying for office? There are those who think that if we don't ask those questions, there is no other question to ask. I'm asking that to ask this one, and this is the question that I'd like you to answer. And if it's one of the one of the questions, you may list it. What questions should the electorate be asking the people that are vying to take the job of governing their lives? Are we asking the right question? Have you been asking the right questions of the people whom we have put in the office to change the game? What questions should we be asking to get a different result?
Thank you very much. There's this book I read not long ago. It says, I think the title of the book is Start With Why. Okay, I can't remember the author now. It starts with why. Nigerians need to ask the right questions. When they ask the right questions, they will take the right decisions as followers. When they take those right decisions as followers, they will be in a better place to choose the kind of leaders they want to do the job of developing their communities, their societies, their states, and their country. Now, it is very important, very, very important. If my father left me a bank, right, and that I'm the 5th generation, and generations before me had managed that bank as chairman, and I was the position of the managing director suddenly became vacant, and I was going to fill it to make sure that I can hand over that same bank to my children, and they can do likewise to that, since it's a family business. I will not hire a farmer. I will not be looking for a farmer. I will not be looking for anybody else. I'll be looking for someone who has made money, managed money, and multiplied money. So this brings you to this place where we look at capacity. Now, capacity, competence. You must be able to show me, Ira, right, what you have done in the past before this time. You must be able to show me what you have been able to do. And from that point, I'll be able to look at what you can do. Now, connected to this, if all of a sudden you see somebody, you see, the thing about politics and politicians is that they come from communities, they come from families. All of a sudden, you see a man who barely could feed his family 2 years ago, suddenly he's a billionaire. People should ask questions. Because what we are also having is that into politics, we are having a lot of slush funds coming from other aspects, from criminal enterprises, just because they see politics as a way of putting themselves above the law. So these questions have to be asked by the electorate. And it is when we begin to ask those questions to the level of competencies that we will improve, not just in ourselves as followers, but also the kind of people we allow in positions or in public offices.
Prof.
Well, let me start by saying I agree entirely with what Ken said. I think that he's put it very well. But there are certain things also. Remember earlier on I did mention the fact that let's stop taking people who we don't know before they are foisted on us. Whether you are in public sector or private sector, there should have been some roles you play, even by just taking public stances on issues, on public issues of corruption, issues of this, of that. With that, the public will be able to judge. There will be a barometer with which to measure you on so many, because you are coming to administer.
But answer this question, Prof. The people will not be able to interrogate these individuals until they become candidates. Is it not too late in the day? Which is why many people are saying, okay, maybe everyone should get into the space so that we select the right persons at the party primary level. So, speak to that.
Look, Ayo, I think the challenge we have here is that it's like we are putting the cart before the horse, which is what you've just alluded to. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's a fact. By the time you are going to begin to exercise that kind of
interrogation,
it's already fait accompli. You've put that particular candidate forward. But what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter, even if you've got the primary, you've got the ticket of your party at the primary level, you're still going to face another candidate. But there is a total absence of interrogation, is what I'm driving at here. So what you get will be I'm so sorry that I have to refer to this example. In recent times, Nigerians have been comparing, you see, those of you who pushed Jonathan out, you can see now what Buhari has done. You can't start suddenly deodorizing something that is not. I'm not referring to, I'm just as an example.
Okay.
You can't start deodorizing something that wasn't good just because what you have now is not any better. So we need to interrogate. But let me say this. There are some questions we should not be asking. I've been seeing a lot of...
Let's do that in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of media outlets doing that. Like, some question like, where do you get your money from? Do you have a what is it called, bullion van to carry? Those are irrelevant questions. As a Nigerian, I can use what we call a bulletproof car if I want to protect myself from attacks. So these are inane questions. Ask somebody, what is your competence? What would you do for Nigerians if you get to this particular? And what can you... If you are a governor of a state before, I could look into your record and say, when you were a governor, you did ABC. How am I sure you won't repeat this thing? Simple as ABC.
Well, those questions are, I think we need what's it called now? A book to write out all those questions so that when the time comes, as the days unfold, as the contenders, or rather pretenders, contenders, candidates, and whatever else that will come up, we'll be able to know them. But we need to.
I've got a quick tweet here from Ayobami Alo. It says there is now speed limit on the Autobahn in Germany. In fact, the speed limit is 130. I live in Germany.
Oh, interesting. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that.
At least
correction.
Now we know.
Yeah.
Professor Ademola Abbas, Professor of International Law and Global Security Analyst, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
This morning. Ken Egba, CEO, True Contact. I don't even know whether to call you a new entrant or a repeat entrant. Thank you so much for your time.
A contender.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Ken. Well,